Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Kyle Gardner, co-founder and CEO of Dobson Avenue Capital Partners, to discuss changing the equation for underrepresented entrepreneurs, in particular Black-owned businesses. Kyle, it's great to see you. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
According to Crunchbase report, only 1% of venture-funded startup founders are Black. Kyle, what are you working on to grow that number?
Yeah, my journey in this space started a long time ago, even before I was born. My grandparents actually started a business when they were teachers in the 1970s, and they were trying to figure out, with no business experience, how to grow it. So they met my business partner, Adam Robbins, one day, and he approached them with fresh out of business school with ways that they can try to raise money through his lending authority. He eventually gave them his full lending authority, and that allowed them to grow their business and eventually sell it to L'Oreal. But in the process, I saw how that business changed not only the lives of my grandparents and my parents, but the lives of the employees that were there. They employed hundreds of people. Some of those people went on to get careers at Fortune 500 companies. Others started their own businesses. And there was really this trickle-down effect from generation to generation. Then my parents went on and started their business in the same space of hair care products, where I worked for a long time in high school and college. And eventually we sold that business as well in 2010. So kind of repeated the story in a sense. And that's where I got a lot of my entrepreneurial experience and operating experience. So now we're trying to figure out through Dobson Avenue, how can we use that experience and platform to really create an emphasis on equity and diversity. So we've set out now with Dobson Avenue to invest specifically in women and minority founders in early stage CPG businesses. We've been doing it now for about a year, and we have committed capital, our first investment, and happy to kind of keep going and with this Empower project to really elevate other businesses via the pitch competition that we're organizing with them.
Kyle, do you think part of the issue for Black and other minority business owners is not having access or the understanding of where to go for funding? We have a big problem in this country with starting financial literacy education at a young age, and most importantly, making it accessible for all. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think it's a complex issue, but I mean, I think for sure the number one thing that comes to my mind is the wealth gap. I think it's really hard for people, entrepreneurs of color and Black entrepreneurs specifically, given the numbers, to go and find that close family or friend to lend them or invest that 5-figure, 6-figure check to get their idea off the stage. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people are just, those early stages, there's not a lot to lend on. There's not a lot to kind of promise as far as equity. And that's the most difficult time. And, if just naturally due to forces outside of your control, you don't have access to that network, it can be an uphill battle. And I think that's really where I think creating that legacy of wealth by investing in other entrepreneurs of color, we can kind of create that trickle-down effect and hopefully change that for the better. But certainly that's just one aspect that we're addressing, but it's a big complicated issue for sure.
I'd like to learn more about the Empower project and why the focus is on the consumer packaged goods space. Why is there a bigger need for diversity in CPG?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So the Empower project was started by Steve Gaither and his team at CA Branding. And essentially he was mentoring a lot of entrepreneurs of color in CPG here in Chicago. And his team wanted to find out a way that they could do it on a broader scale. And they approached him about starting this formal program after George Floyd happened this summer. And they decided that this would be the best way that they can lend their services and organize other groups to lend their services to really help change the lives of a entrepreneur or several entrepreneurs of color and Black in the space. So essentially, in CPG specifically, it tends to be a more diverse industry, I think, in general. But I think since that's what we know and that's what Steve knows, we thought this is the best way for us to use our skills to really create a change for the better.
What can established Black business owners be doing as a resource for up-and-coming Black entrepreneurs?
I think it's always great if people, when they do hit that echelon where they really made it, to always kind of look down and look around and take a second and say, hey, how can I help out? And I think certainly that's what we've done in our story, is to try and say, hey, we've done, the kind of grow, scale, exit scenario twice now in our family. And now it's time that we kind of look outward to say, can we help others do the same thing? So I think when people are willing and able, it's great to help do that, especially in their spaces to the extent that they know knowledge, because at the end of the day, knowledge is great, but and it's of no value if it's stuck in your head. So we like to share that knowledge and try to help others recreate our story.
In 2020, businesses around the world made a remarkable pivot to virtual environments in response to COVID-19. And I think the silver lining to the pandemic is the opportunity technology created for companies to build more diverse and inclusive workforces as it opened up the geographical talent pool and showed management teams productivity can soar in a remote environment. It's also, of course, a win for prospective employees to get a seat at the table, but accessibility is always the key here. How do you feel about technology lending to more diverse and inclusive workforces?
I think it's been a great tool. I mean, certainly the pandemic is something that none of us wish for, but I think the immersion of technology, especially with pitch competitions, has been a real added value, because now when we have a pitch competition here in Chicago, we can ask for submissions from all over the country, and we can see CPG businesses in LA, the Southeast, the Northwest, and places we'd normally probably not be able to see deals. So it's been a great equalizer. And I think specifically for DEI, it's a great equalizer for people to be able to create more competition and be able to see more ideas. The more faces that are present and being able to be present, I think only is good for those businesses and for creating more equality, but also good for us as investors and entrepreneurs, because the more competition, the better outcomes, and we're better as an economy otherwise. So.
Right. And well, it also broadens the investor base for the company as well, which of course we've seen that with the IPO roadshows and so forth, how it's brought in the investor base. So I would definitely agree with you there, Kyle. Thank you so much for the insight. Appreciate you being on Trade Talks. And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thank you for having me.